a listener production.
Hey, it's Antoinette Lattouf. Welcome to the Weekend Briefing, where we hit pause on the news cycle and zoom in on someone making waves. And today's guest, well, you might not know his name, but you almost certainly know the blonde guy with the hectic moustache who keeps popping up on your social media feed. He is Konrad Michalski, aka Punter's Politics. And his mission? Well, to slice through the political spin and convince everyday Aussies, especially the blokes, that politics actually matters. You need to get invested and you need to get educated. Now that the election's been called, brace yourself, because Konrad's satirical videos and chaotic energy are about to be everywhere. And in this episode, we unpack how a high school teacher ended up taking on gas oligarchs and housing inequality online, and he shares his best tips on how to vote smart and avoid election regret. And later it is the weekend list, where my producer Helen Smith and I serve up some absolute corkers on what to watch, eat and do. Stay tuned. But first, let's talk punters, let's talk politics with Konrad Michalski. Konrad Michalski, aka Punter's Politics, welcome to the Weekend Briefing.
Thanks for having me. Good to be here.
We're going to get into all of the big issues: politics, the election, political apathy, cutting through the role of social media. But before we do that, I want to know a little bit more about you, because I know that you were once a high school teacher, but take me back to your earlier life. Did you grow up in a particularly political family? Was there discussion of politics at the dinner table? What was it like?
I wouldn't say I grew up in an overly political family. Just the classic Channel 9, Channel 10 news running in the household, which I don't think would be very political. But I did grow up in a household that enjoyed robust discussion, particularly between myself, my mum and my dad. And we would engage in many different topics. But I think I was a bit of the outlier that would question things, wonder why they were the way they were, and then challenge the status quo that existed. And it got me in trouble a little bit at school every now and then for questioning what seemed to be silly rules and why they existed. So maybe that was what was ingrained in me from a young age, to just continue to challenge the status quo if it didn't make sense.
What sorts of things were you challenging?
I mean, at school, from anything for school uniform to what is the bloody point of learning this topic. I hated science. Hydrogen, helium, lithium, beryllium, boron, carbon, and nitrogen. That's all I can remember from year 10 science. Didn't love it at all. I've later to come to realize that science is pretty important. But I also just looked at the science curriculum and went, I don't need this. I'm not studying science. This is pointless. So I think just your generic things that kids struggle with, that would then ask me when I was a teacher, so why are we doing this? I was like, listen, mate, sometimes you just got to do what you got to do. They might not see a point for it, but you'll learn something, I swear.
So then you become a teacher. You go from being that student that asks all of those questions that are usually quite annoying to re-entering the school grounds. Why was that?
I think it probably was because I never got any satisfactory answers from my teachers about, if I'm asking the question, why are we teaching this? They just say, oh, it's really important. They'd give me the general party line that teachers might give with, well, this is very important to know memorize the first 20 elements of the periodic table. And I just never bought it. And then I thought, if I've become a teacher, well, partly becoming a teacher, good holidays, didn't know what else to do, stepped into teaching. But if I'm going to be a teacher, I want to be able to be honest with these kids and just be honest when I'm like, yeah, this is kind of pointless, but you're learning some skills, so suck it up and do it anyway. I thought I could hopefully give some better answers that I never received.
Mad respect that 5 minutes into the interview, you're already throwing shade at your teachers.
Some might be okay with that, others probably not.
Being in that classroom, did you get an insight, because you were a high school teacher, did you get an insight into how connected teenagers are to politics? Because there's been this long-held belief that, the kids of today, they're just so apathetic, they're so selfish, and I wonder if that sentiment still rings true.
I think to an extent, yes, but they're also inherently curious about how everything functions. And so when I was teaching year 10 economics, very quickly when we'd be discussing some economic principles like externalities and how, businesses can externalize the cost of the environmental damage onto people, very quickly their curiosity leads them into political discussions. But I think teenagers, by their very nature, whilst being curious, their world shrinks to their social world and pop culture, and so I think both are true. They're very self-focused, inward-focused. They don't care how they make you feel. Teachers just getting low-grade bullied by teenagers just every single day, just micro-trauma upon micro-trauma. That's maybe why I left. But they are inherently curious, and you can kind of unlock that with the right series of questions, and they're not afraid to ask the overly simplistic but often very hard question to answer. And I think those were the questions that for me were never answered satisfactorily.
You've mentioned you've obviously left teaching, and perhaps in part to bullying teenagers. But what was the other reason?
A few other reasons were I couldn't hold a job for some reason as my Punters Politics platform was taking off. Parents complained. Go figure. I don't know why. I think principal.
They don't do that. We don't do that.
Yeah, for some reason, parents thought, and I don't know. The principal in the end was kind of okay with it, but I couldn't, get as many casual days because I was just a casual teacher. Because he was just saying that, parents just kept complaining because all the kids, obviously, as my platform grew, they knew I was on YouTube and things like that. So it became harder for me to be a human being talking about politics in a way that I even thought was very nonpartisan. I'm not backing in a team here. I'm not indoctrinating kids to any sort of thing. I'm just pointing out patterns that they might see, how corporations might influence politics and things like that. And so to this day, I don't know what the bloody hell the parents were complaining about, but it made my life pretty difficult to the point where I just essentially was like, well, I can't keep, this system is too rigid and teachers, at least in the system I was in, are just beholden to parents complaining about whatever it is, and then the school's just got to, give into those whims quite one
What was the content you were making at the time?
Same sort of stuff, little skits, essentially the same stuff I'm making now. The one that probably everyone saw was the one where I'm talking to Qatar about how they're paying no taxes. And, whoa, why is that? Well, because they got $76 billion for their gas exports and Australians only got $2 billion. And I just kind of compared how if our country was a little bit smarter and a little bit more savvy, we too maybe could have the option of not paying taxes like Qatar or having free housing. I think some people in Qatari citizens can get as well.
Yeah.
And so just that sort of very zoomed out political perspective, just little skits like that. But maybe satire didn't come across to some parents. I don't know.
Okay, so you get bullied by students, you get bullied by their parents.
Yeah, correct.
You leave education and you decide, I want to work in a more safe and respectful place.
Yes.
Online and politics.
On the internet.
On the internet. And how's that going for you?
Well, initially I resisted. I was just going through some of my Facebook posts just the last couple of years before I made the jump into making content online. And I was always posting, just something would annoy me and I'd post it online. And no one cared. No one in my circles really cared at all. And so that's why I started just posting stuff on the internet to express what I thought was just something very outrageous that people should probably be aware of. My friends were always telling me, really patronizingly, you really seem to care about this sort of stuff. Mate, you should get into politics. You should do it. And I just thought, nah, it's too divisive. Everyone's too angry. I've seen, the American political sphere, all these punters on YouTube giving their opinions. Everyone's like, F this guy, he sucks, blah, blah, blah. It's too divisive. So I resisted it for a long time. And then one day that gas stat about Qatar and Norway getting heaps more came out, and I thought, this is ridiculous. I'm just gonna explain this in a really simple sort of way. And from that first couple of Instagram posts that really essentially exploded, I discovered that what I experienced as apathy from everyone around me, just, who cares? No one cares. I discovered that actually Aussies are not apathetic. They do care about this stuff. And it was largely more positive. And so up until now, as far as doing politics online, I've probably had an easier run than someone like, say, yourself. It hasn't been too bad, but I think as the platform continues to grow, and if, Murdoch's Sky News might stop ignoring and start maybe turn me into a Greta Thunberg or something, then I think it can go to a next toxic level. I think I'm in a Goldilocks zone right now. No more followers. We're all good. Let's just chill here.
And your platform is called Punters Politics. You've got an Instagram handle, YouTube page, and a podcast. I want to talk about who the punter is, because we often hear the media and the political class refer to punters, and increasingly those institutions are quite insulated or in a bit of a bubble, and they're not really connected to this, and I hate this expression, like middle Australia punter. To you, who is a punter?
A punter are just the blokes that I grew up with in Newcastle, the blokes I go riding with. Half of them work in the mines, just everyday middle income Aussies. And for me specifically with my platform, it's a lot of blokes. It's not exclusively blokes. Everyone can be a punter.
Yeah.
But as I walk around the streets, the punters that recognize me and represent like 70 to 80% in my stats online, it's millennial blokes.
Yeah.
Really, that are not typically politically engaged, but they know they're getting scammed. And the reason why I get every single day a punter come up to me, I shake my hand, oh mate, yeah, bloody great stuff, really good. I know we're getting scammed. And they know it. We know it. We all know we're getting scammed because something's not quite working. We can't afford what we used to be able to afford. Houses are getting ridiculous. We know something's going on. And all I'm doing is saying, you are correct. It is a scam. And here's specifically what's going on with, let's say, energy or housing or food prices. And it just helps people go, who wouldn't normally engage in politics. They're discovering that these problems are big enough to be systemic, and they lean on politics going, well, how can I explain why it's not working? And that's probably where they connect with me and my platform and what I talk about.
Do you think Aussie men who aren't usually into politics connect with you? Because if I was to put your image into a drink, it would be like a VB long neck. Like, with respect, because it's a great beer and I do drink it.
That was very respectful, of course. It could be the mullet.
Have you ever been likened to a VB long neck?
Yeah, VB. I don't know. That's a bit lower class than I would have thought. I was thinking like something a bit more boutique, craft, maybe out of Melbourne. But I'll work on that. Maybe I'll trim the mustache next time.
What about a Carlton Draft long neck?
Yeah, maybe something like that.
And so what are you hearing when you have these discussions with the sorts of men that aren't usually the types to be politically engaged? Like, what are you hearing that they're most worried about?
It's cost of living, essentially. But as the media and politics always talk about, it's cost of living, they just think by talking about it in these vague general terms that, we're listening to you. We're concerned with cost of living. But I think I go to that next level. And I think punters can hear bullshit when politicians just spin it and they hear a good talking point like, oh yes, we're concerned with the price of energy and the price of, but punters are smart enough. We've all been to school. Some of us have been to university, others trade school, whatever it is. We're smart enough to know you haven't diagnosed the problem. I'm not hearing any solutions here. And I kind of come along and go, well, did you know that we are bloody rich? We are loaded with minerals. Yeah, they do know that. They know that. And then they ask the question, well, why are we getting absolutely stiffed on this? Why am I not seeing any benefits like Norway or Qatar? What's going on here with housing? We hear these vague, supply, demand, but no one's talking about who to blame and what the problem is. And I think they're the conversations I'm kind of having when I can explain to them and say, well, actually, on this boring graph that some nerd put together, it shows house prices uncoupling from wages when John Howard halved the capital gains tax. And this might have something to do with it. Maybe all the investors buying up all the properties and all our politicians owning 2, 3, 4 houses, maybe that has something to do with it. And maybe political corruption at the top, which we're not allowed to use the word corruption because it's all legal. So don't sue me, but punters would perceive it to be corruption when the people making the rules for these sectors that we have massive problems with, energy, food, housing, banking, we have massive issues in our economy, monopolies across the board, but none of them are getting fixed. And is it just merely a coincidence that the top shares being held by politicians right now are the banks, are big Coles and Woolies, are gambling companies, are mining companies. Is that coincidence? They all own houses and are investors themselves. Is that coincidence, or is there a deeper conspiracy going on? And punters just aren't buying the same old, oh, well, we need to, give us a first home buyer grant.
Yeah, and bloody immigrants. I love that. When all else fails, you just say bloody immigrants in your videos.
And even with the immigrant conversation, that's very potent with my audience as well. Like there's half the audience being like, we only want to blame immigrants for everything, don't you? There's that part. But then there's also the conversation that Aussies intuitively know needs to be had. Like, what is our plan with immigration? Like, is it the Ponzi scheme to pump up our GDP for as long as we possibly can? Like, infrastructure isn't going well. What is the plan? And there's no conversations about long-term trajectory. And anyone that mentions immigration we're sick of issues just polarizing. If you go, well, hang on, have we had a conversation about immigration? What the plan is at least? Bloody racist. We're kind of sick of that.
You've previously said that you think the major parties need a kick in the nuts.
Specifically there, yes.
Which politician needs this kick the most? Figuratively speaking, of course.
Figuratively speaking, definitely endorsing no kicking of any nuts, metaphorical nuts only. I would say the major party politicians, and we can just kick off with Albo and Peter Dutton.
Yeah.
They are seeing their primary vote diminish every single time. They are seeing dissatisfaction. We need bigger solutions. We need proper solutions. We need systemic solutions. And they just think they can keep going with this horse trading of who's in power every now and then. And I think the election will hopefully show, if the trend does continue, we in Australia, we don't have to vote for either of you. We don't have to just go, well, you've had a turn, so let's just swing to the other side. We get to have a more nuanced vote. And I think the biggest metaphorical kick in the nuts is the only thing we have as voters. They have to come back to us once every 3 years to say, can we have our power back, please? And we get to say, you know what? I know you might be slightly better than you, but I'm going to go with someone else.
Obviously, you cut through political spin in a way that resonates with regular Australians. Previously, baby boomers had the voting bloc. But now millennials are on par and we're only going to grow. You obviously reach millennial men. And so I'm curious, have any parties or ministers reached out to consult with you?
The short answer is no, especially the major parties. Like independents obviously are more open to my message because I'm kind of a bit anti-establishment in it. And so a few independent politicians will reach out. I haven't been asked for any specific advice, but I'm happy to give it. I've given it to Albo before, potentially on the briefing before. And people are looking for obviously authenticity in their politicians. And what we see, especially from the major two, we're seeing polling. We're seeing you go into a room, hear what sounds good, come out, repeat. And that still works with a lot of the electorate. I understand how easily people can be manipulated. Propaganda works, that's for sure. But I think millennials in particular, we've grown up in a world full of propaganda. We're probably better at discerning authenticity or not, or what at least looks like authenticity. And I think that's the biggest challenge for the major politicians to just, I don't care what your focus group has told you to say about an issue. I'm genuinely looking at policies. Look at the policies, show me the outcomes. Don't treat me like an idiot. I've been to school. I know that studies exist with actual solutions. I know countries exist out there that have solved these problems. So don't come at me with the same old solutions, especially on something like housing. You've been giving out first home buyer grants. You've been letting the private property market and developers do whatever they want for 20 to 30 years. And what, you want us to continue doing that? I think with millennials, when so much is on the line, we just don't have time for the same old solutions. And that's why if I was Albo, I'd be worried. If you're offering piecemeal, tinker around the edges, we need more than that. Because at the moment we're the generation that even if housing's fixed, we're the ones that slip through the cracks.
And so in the lead up to the election, with, I would say, quite a bit of apathy or dissatisfaction with major parties, particularly among younger voters, what is your prediction for the outcome? A minority government of which colour?
Who bloody knows? Because anything can happen. Any sort of natural disaster can pop up. ScoMo, and who knows how much not holding a hose really hurt him in the pop culture beauty pageant world of politics that can change so quick. I think whether it happens now or it happens in the next elections, millennials are now the largest voting bloc, and politicians probably need to start speaking to us. And we're probably sick of politicians putting the party first. And so I'm hoping in this election that the major parties do get a kick in the nuts, and that means they have a fall in the primary vote, which could be a minority government to the Labor Party and maybe the Labor Party will then have to reevaluate the policies it brings. So I don't know. I know polling's always out there with, predicting who there and everywhere, but I think if Donald Trump proves anything, I wouldn't place a bet.
And so back to your platform, you've obviously got your website, podcast, massive following, you're on YouTube, you've got Patreon supporters backing you. How long did it take? Because it's been quite a quick growth from what I can see. How long did it take until you could replace your income and go, okay, this is what I do, independent and self-sufficient?
Probably 3 to 6 months from taking off, and probably 3 months in, I lost my job and I thought, well, I'll go full time on this. I'm scraping by with the punters on Patreon. And then probably 3 months after that, I was managing to be able to make some kind of salary and living to keep doing what I'm doing.
And obviously satire is a big part of what you do. Do you think, how much do you think the satirical element is what people connect with as opposed to just dissatisfaction with the clickbait alternatives, the kind of divisive culture war clickbait alternatives in a lot of legacy media outlets?
I think it's the only way we can cope with what is an otherwise depressing trajectory where we don't see change too easily on the horizon. And satire has a way of, I don't think I'm that funny of a person. And I feel like I'm just pointing things out and then imagining, okay, what conversation must have gone on between fossil fuel lobbyists and politicians. And it seems that satire in this instance is closest to the truth. It's actually the most believable thing. And I think maybe that's that combination of people watching this going, I know this is ridiculous and that surely wouldn't have happened. But for some reason, it's the only possible explanation for why we are getting so scammed by large corporations and politicians in Australia right now.
Do you think also one of the keys to your success is that you are tackling these big picture issues where it is the regular punter against the big guy, the regular punter against the insurance companies, the regular punter against gas companies, the regular punter against building corporations? Do you think that is, because that's not as polarising or culture war-ish?
Yeah, I do think everyone's sick of the culture war. I think the culture war is just a manufacture by these large corporations to give the virtue signal opportunity to corporations to pretend they're on our team. Yeah. And if we're fighting about something, the problem with culture war things is okay, it's a cool dinner discussion that can get everyone fired up. But it has, honestly, the reason why they're picked is because it impacts a tiny minority of Australians and it has no real world tangible impacts. And there's some groups that are actually vilified by this, and I feel really bad for those groups that are scapegoated in order to distract the voting population. But when everyone's fighting about a population of 2 to 3% about a niche issue that for some reason everyone has to get involved in, we're not talking about the very systemic things. And I think when it comes back to, the punter versus this group, the punter versus that group, I'm kind of orienting going, politics is very relatable and it's really practical, because if you don't do politics, it'll just happen to you, and it's happening to everyone right now, and it's happening in the form of high energy bills. Why the bloody hell couldn't I turn my heater on last winter? Because I've got gas in this rental house and I'm not paying for it. It's too expensive. And that's very real for people. And then I go, well, here's how it's connected to the big picture issue. Those budgets are exporting all of your gas and making you pay what Europe pays because our government just gave it to them. And I'm trying to go, here's your issue. Let's connect it to a bigger political systemic thing that hopefully we can put pressure on to begin to change the fundamental structures of our economy and how Australia works.
So in this election, we've started to see some politicians use influencers or partner with influencers to push their message. I have a couple of questions about this. Firstly, do you see yourself as a social media influencer?
Other than the follower account, I prefer not to see myself as an influencer and be lumped in that category, because I don't want to be pushing any products on people, and I don't even want to be pushing political parties onto people. So if a political party say, hey, come and endorse me, all that, I don't want to do that, because I see myself on the side of every everyday punter and everyone disagrees. I've got mates that have if you work in a different section of Newcastle, where I'm from, you can have different policies that'll benefit you over somebody else. And I think that's politics at its core. You don't have to be fully altruistic. You can, but you don't have to vote for what's best for everybody. I'd even prefer if Aussies just voted what's best for their own interests. But more often than not, punters are just getting fooled and scammed by politicians, telling them what they want to hear. Then they vote against their best interests. So step one, I just want people to vote in line with their best interest. And then I can make the argument, hey, I know that's good for you, Gina Reinhart, Billionaires of Australia. That's a great policy for you. The economy's great for you. But hey, for me, it's not awesome.
So you don't see yourself as an influencer, but my next question about influencers is, what do you think about political parties leaning on people with clout or following? And I know we can't necessarily lump everybody with a big following online into the same category, but using that as a way to try and reach different audiences.
Well, I guess influencers are just, and this maybe I don't see myself as one, it's just another form of marketing. They've just decentralized marketing for network marketing with you and your friends, and it kind of grows from there, and influencers are cheaper. So why wouldn't you just throw your advertising budget of 40 grand at a bunch of influencers that might align with your message, might not? So from that front, of course, it's just another form of advertising in order for them to get their messages out there. And I think I think our generation's kind of aware of what goes on with, I'm promoting this product because they've paid me to do that. But I will say this, once again, nothing's a perfect shot because celebrities have been endorsing candidates forever. Look at how many endorsements.
Didn't work for the Democrats.
Exactly. It's Taylor Swift, as great as she is, did not swing the needle against the man coming down the tunnel, D. Trump. So it's all part of it, but I wouldn't say that they're any more influential than any other medium of advertising and propaganda.
Let's talk about your billboards. Did you decide, hey, if Clive Palmer can do it, so can I?
That was somewhat of the thought process. If Clive Palmer can do it with $1 billion, why can't I do it with 2,000 regular Aussie punters who raised $85,000? You notice I did take notes from the billboard king himself. Yellow.
I did notice.
Not his yellow. And as many thumbs as you can fit on a billboard, we've put on there. I think it was a bit more of just a piss take in the way of going, this is such a scam. I wonder if we can just crack that mainstream, because otherwise you're an influencer online, Instagram world where people are sharing online, people are seeing it. But there's something about the legitimacy of a billboard in a marketplace or on TV or corporate mainstream media picking up these news stories. And I thought, why is no one talking about this? Maybe we need a billboard. And then it just kind of spiraled from there. I thought we'd get one, but the punters are really motivated about this issue, which I think shows the disconnect of our politicians. Because where are the politicians? Albo's not talking about it. Dutton's not talking about it. They're not talking about our resource royalties and things like that. I understand why, because they're afraid of the mining lobby. But no one's talking about it. But I managed to raise $85,000 from people who didn't have the money to give just to put my dumb face on a billboard. And I think if politicians are really listening to the electorate, it really sounds like something they ought to be listening to or at least looking at when they drive past.
Well, for those who haven't seen the billboard, what's the messaging?
The messaging is around why so small. So I've got my thumb and index finger indicating a small something. It might be a reference to something else. I'm not sure. Maybe some kind of innuendo there. And with a graph showing how much money Norway makes from their resource royalties and taxation and how much Australia gets. And the long story short is Australia gets bugger all. One of the cartels or corporations that is Australian that's paying zero taxes and always pays close to zero tax is Santos. So in Gladstone, there's a billboard that says, "Oi, Santos, how good's a tax dodge?" Because how do they get out of it? I'm paying tax. Every other Aussie punter's paying tax. What the bloody hell's going on here?
And sticking with gases and tax, there's a post on your Instagram where much beloved dog Bluey and his family are on there. Australians are pretty united in our love for dogs. Do you think perhaps canines might be the effective political messengers that are underutilised?
I think if Bluey can't get the message out there, I don't know if anything possibly can.
And Let's take a moment to appreciate and reflect on how far you've come in 12 months. You only posted your first YouTube video a year ago, as I understand.
Yeah.
So what's next for Punters Politics? More billboards? A Bluey Punters Politics collaboration?
If Bluey's open, I'd love to do a team-up reel with Bluey. I think the ABC might have something against it, but we'll throw some money at him and see if we can bribe him into fighting for the punters. I think I'm so focused on this next election and making sure punters just have the resources at their disposal to understand. Don't just listen to what a politician says. Look at what they do and look at how they vote, because they can't hide from that. So websites like They Vote For You show transparently what that is. I'm hoping to eventually build out making politics simple, just trying to continue to grow. So I can explain stuff that's cool, but what other things do we need to make politics really simple? And what we really need is a place or a platform to go to where politicians can't hide, where people can just see the raw data of how they voted, who funds them, in a simple, easy to use way. Because we do have some transparency in our democracy, but it's hidden behind a veil of boring academic, who gives a crap websites that are the worst. How to use, like just looking at where submissions are on different bills. I don't even know how to use it, and I grew up with the internet, so I can't imagine someone who has no time, can't be bothered, too busy, got to take the kids to school, got to go to work. They don't have time for this. So whatever I can do to try and hold politicians more accountable to what they tell us is the direction I'm headed.
For people who are time poor or perhaps a little disengaged, what two things would you advise? I always love a little listicle, a mini listicle. They do before they cast their votes. Two things they consider or two things they do before they cast their vote.
Look at who funds your politicians. Look at where the money's coming from. There's a few good articles on The Guardian. Just type in political funding 2023, The Guardian, and it'll pop up with where the money's coming from. And you'll see who's donating, especially to the major two parties. And then you're looking at how they vote, theyvoteforyou.org. And then there's lots of other useful tools. Like, I don't think you need to tune into politics and listen to, Q&A and listen to the debate around certain things, because punters know what's good for them. They know what's working for them and what might be a step in the right direction. So utilizing those websites, those tools, if you really can spend 15 minutes, ABC's Vote Compass, I'm sure they'll release it. But what I would encourage people to do on like something like a Vote Compass, where you go, which political party is actually in line with me, on questions that you haven't looked into or you haven't done any reading on, or kind of had a friend that maybe like works in the space of childcare or healthcare. If you don't know the answer to something, just click I don't know. Because what happens is, with the things that we haven't looked into, politicians feed us narratives that we think are overly simplistic solutions and then get us to vote for them on something that actually doesn't impact us, or worse, actually feeds us the answer that leads to worse outcomes for us. So what I do when I do Vote Compass, I go, I used to teach year 10 economics. I know a lot about externalities. Yes, bloody pay your taxes. Yes, you need to regulate this because we're paying the health costs of pumping coal or doing whatever we're doing here in Newcastle. So I'm going to vote on those ones. When it comes to really obscure sort of side issues like, should this industry sector be earn more or less or whatever it is, in those things, I'm like, listen, I don't know the answer to this one. I'll put I don't know. And then you're more likely to at least narrow the field of infinite issues down to just one point. And then at least you're voting in line with what you think on one issue that you know more about.
That was wonderful. I did ask for 2 pointers. You gave me 4. So much information, so much knowledge to share.
Thanks for counting.
Thanks so much, Konrad.
Thanks for having me.
Konrad Michalski, aka Punters Politics, and you can find him by searching the handle Punters Politics on Instagram, TikTok, or YouTube. It is now my favourite time of the weekend, and I hope it is fast becoming your favourite time of the weekend. It is Weekend List with Helen Smith, where we give you pointers on what to watch, see, eat, do, and everything in between. Helen Smith, hit me.
My first recommendation is Adolescence on Netflix.
Oh, okay, that's on my list too, but you go first.
Yes. So I feel like there's so much to unpack with this TV series. It's a 4-part series on Netflix. It's been taking over the internet this week. We did an episode on it earlier this week as well. And the narrative arc follows a 13-year-old boy who's been accused of murdering his schoolmate. Now, the storyline in the first episode really focuses on whether he's guilty, but then quickly turns to why he would do it. and it takes us into the zeitgeist of the manosphere.
Yeah.
So I knew a bit about the manosphere. I knew a bit about incel culture.
Yep.
I didn't know much about the 80-20 rule.
I'd heard about that.
Yeah.
My nephews talk about that.
Yes. So it's this young boys, like we're talking 8-year-olds to, going into their teens, going into their early 20s. This manosphere and the messages around it. So the 80-20 rule is that 80% of women are only attracted to 20% of men. And then it brings in the whole incel culture.
But it's also suggesting that type of man is the Andrew Tate type of man, because there is a reference to Andrew Tate in this, which this series isn't based on a true story, but the creators say it was based on a spate of attacks and a culture that is flourishing concerningly online and having real-world violent implications.
Yeah, exactly. And Andrew Tate is brought up in this series quite a few times.
Yep.
And that whole masculine male rage as well that's online. But it is a really good watch, but also quite confronting at some times.
So confronting. I don't know if you noticed this, but every episode is shot in one take.
Yes.
So there are no camera angle changes. It's shot like a theatre production, but it moves from houses to inside the cop car to inside the holding cell.
Yeah.
And it is all done in one take, which is an incredible feat for an hour program, with sometimes hundreds of characters, because it'll enter a schoolyard where there'll be teachers yelling at some kids, walk into a classroom, go out in the field, speak to some cops, go to a flower vigil for the deceased. It is incredible. It's a British show, for anybody who doesn't know that. My only criticism is sometimes I had to put the captions on because their accent was so strong, particularly the mum and dad. Sometimes I couldn't understand their accents.
I think the mum and dad were like Irish. I was so confused.
Maybe it was Irish, but I
don't know.
struggled a little bit, which is very strange because I am exposed to a lot of accents. Anyway, that's a teeny tiny criticism, but I anticipate that they will clean up in awards in the UK and elsewhere.
I hope they do.
Because of the importance of the subject matter, but because also of the direction and just how brave it was to shoot that in one take and have a 13-year-old not only hold his own, but absolutely crush it in his performance.
Yeah, and I think it takes the conversation forward with all of this Andrew Tate stuff. And in that interview that I did earlier in the week, I actually spoke with Renee Chopping, who's a trauma counsellor for survivors of sex trafficking and an advocate for child protection. And she recently led a petition that successfully got Andrew Tate content taken down from Spotify. So this is really bad content that is, in her words, was teaching young boys how to groom women in circumstances of something like sex trafficking. And if this content is out there and the series points to this, how do you manage that? How do you know as a parent? It's impossible. You cannot monitor your child's online activities all the time.
Yeah.
And I think calling for legislation around more of how do we monitor this, and like the big tech companies, it's just
it's terrifying, and I don't want to underestimate the impact Andrew Tate has, but I'm also suspicious of conversations that only talk about Andrew Tate, because he's not the only person contributing to this culture. No. And so what this series does is it raises a whole lot of questions about tech surveillance of of children online, notions of masculinity intergenerationally, like what you emulate from a father or a grandfather or a sports star, that this is a much bigger issue.
Yeah, it's a society issue.
It is. And anyway, I think we've raved on about it enough. Highly recommend it. Our episode's very intense, but Adolescence on Netflix, definitely worth a watch. I'm going to jump into it is my second recommendation, since we both love adolescence, and it's very different. It is on Instagram, and it is the handle Disappointing Affirmations. And it is a series of quotes that when you first look at the page, it's all like water and waterfalls and clouds and sunsets and sunrises, except that the affirmations on these images are all but inspiring. So here's one of them. Everything will be okay, just not for you. Another one, you're doing your best, which is fucking embarrassing.
Oh my God. I love these.
It's okay not to be okay. Life is a nightmare. Disappointed with your life? Have you tried being dead inside? And so, because they're so visually cliche and beautiful, anytime I chat to a friend, and I'm trying to learn to just listen and not necessarily offer solutions because I'm a really pragmatic person, and I'm like, oh, well, maybe you could do this and do some exercise and get a mental health plan. And sometimes people just need to be heard and to be like, yeah, you know what? It sucks. And so now I'm doing, now I'm sending them one of this. One day you'll be happy. Just one day. That's it. I mean, I don't know if that's the right thing to be doing, but that's what I do.
I love that, the dark humor. I remember I was at Aldi once and there were cards, like positive quote cards, and I was reading them and it was like, you're trying your best. And I was like, really? I was like, but are we also trying? I was just kind of like, I can't do that stuff. There's those kind of quotes.
The toxic positivity really annoys me. And so my sister one of my sisters, because I have 4, who always calls me up with a bunch of problems and feelings. She's got big feelings. And so I sent her this just yesterday. It's okay to have feelings, but do you need to have so fucking many? Anyway, disappointing affirmations on Instagram. What's your second one, Helen?
My second one is the Good Bad Billionaire podcast, the BBC podcast.
Okay.
So it looks into how the planet's richest people make their billions, and it talks about celebrities, CEOs, tech giants, and at the end it also rates them. Are they a good, bad, or just another billionaire?
Is there such thing as a good billionaire?
I think there could be, depending on what they do with their wealth. Depending on how the charities, how much charitable work they do, how
much they get taxed.
Yes, how much they get taxed, how much they give back, and also what are they doing to make their billions? Is it a good thing or a bad thing? So the episodes that I really loved, Gina Reinhardt, because I was like,
bad billionaire.
Yeah.
I don't even need to listen to make that judgment.
Yeah. Well, I actually came out feeling a bit sorry for her.
Oh.
I know. I was shocked. She was
because of the family feud?
Because of her childhood. She didn't have one.
Oh,
she was groomed from the age of like 8 to become who she is.
Okay.
And at the age of 13 was going to business meetings.
I mean, empathy is a good thing, but I suspect I'd still judge her.
Oh,
but
yeah.
Continue.
Oh, yeah. The climate denying stuff that comes out in that episode, I was like, okay, girl.
Yeah.
Another one was Martha Stewart. That was a really interesting one.
I didn't know she was a billionaire.
Yeah, she was back in the day. She's not right now, but she did reach billionaire status.
Okay.
That one was wild with, takes all the way from her rise and then also going to prison. Now her rise again in the zeitgeist with Snoop Dogg. So that's really interesting. And then the other one I really liked was Kim Kardashian because I love the Kardashians. But I feel like they were a bit harsh on Kim, these BBC journalists. They were kind of a bit highbrow.
Yeah, like harsh on Kim but a bit sympathetic towards Gina. I don't know.
But yeah.
Look, I think we as a society society's a little bit broken to allow for billionaires because billionaires only can prosper because they are existing in a kind of a tax system and an ecosystem and policies that allow you to nuke the environment and get rich.
Yeah.
And so some could argue, well, they're working within the system that allows them to flourish. I'm all for hating on billionaires being being an Olympic sport.
Yeah, you can only punch up, right? Like
exactly.
Yeah, it's really good. So I really recommend Good Bad Billionaire BBC podcast. But you can go through. They've done heaps of episodes, but obviously I just chose the females because I was like, yes, female billionaires. Tell me more. But yeah, they have a bunch of different billionaires there to dissect.
I've got a disappointing affirmation for Elon Musk.
Oh, great.
Stop worrying if people like you. They don't. That is it for this week. Thank you so much for joining the Weekend Briefing. Do us a favour. If you enjoyed the chat with Konrad, aka Punters Politics, as much as we did, just take a moment to hit share and pass it on to someone who you think might benefit from it. We'd also love to hear your feedback if you want to give us a review, maybe some stars. We're always encouraging 4 or 5 as a minimum. That's it from me. I'll be back next week, but the team will be back in your headphones from Monday with the news of the day and a fascinating deep dive. Take care of yourself.
Listener.